Uh,
Okay, good morning and good afternoon or good evening, depending if you're watching us live or watching a recording. You're watching a recording because we're recording this session. Welcome to another session of the sixth Global Stop Cyberbullying Telesummit. My name is Tito Morais. I'm based in Portugal, in a small town called Rio Tinto, in the outskirts of Porto, Portugal's second largest city. I'm the founder of Miúdos Seguros na Net, which stands for Safe Kids on the Net. I founded this project in 2003, more than 20 years ago. My boy, I'm getting old. And in 2016, I co-wrote a book together with two psychologist friends called Cyberbullying, a guide for parents and educators. It's published only in Portugal. And in 2021, I had the pleasure of meeting Cristiane Miranda for the first time. And from our conversations stemmed the idea of creating a project called Agarrados à Net, Clinging on the Net, which deals with digital well-being. So I'm not alone, and therefore I hand over to my co-host, and a special thanks to our sponsors and supporters, TikTok, Google, .pt, and the Agarrados.net project. And now the floor is yours, Cristiane.
Thank you, Tito. Hello, everyone. My name is Cristiane, and I'm speaking from Barcelos, a small town more up north of Portugal. If you don't know it yet, you should, because it's a very beautiful town. I am a coach. I created the Teen on Top Youth Coaching Project, and as Tito said, co-creator of Agarrados.net project. The Net project, Clinging on the Net, it's a project that aims to promote the well-being of children, youth, and adults in some specific areas, such as to prevent excessive use of screens, to prevent and to tackle cyberbullying, to reduce the negative impacts of social media on the body image of children, youth, but also adults, and to prevent image-based sexual violence, to prevent the negative impacts of digital footprint, to prevent and tackle dangerous viral challenge, and to promote media literacy. And of course, to promote positive digital parenting, which cross-cuts all these topics. But it's precisely in context of the prevention and tackling cyberbullying that we are here today, right, Tito?
Exactly. And for another session of the Telesummit. This is already the sixth edition in which we try to bring guests from different countries. We try to have representatives, at least one representative from each continent. And we've more or less succeeded in that. And the idea is to bring people who have done research on the topic, who have developed projects on the topic, and that have interventions in schools about bullying or cyberbullying, or topics related to bullying and cyberbullying. The idea is to give us and share with us ideas on how to identify, to prevent, intervene, and tackle bullying and cyberbullying. So without further ado, let's introduce our guest, Cristiane.
Yes, our guest today is James O'Higgins Norman from Ireland, which we already have the pleasure to meet in person. And we are trying to bring him here to Telesummit in 2 or 3 years, I think. So finally, we can get him here. It's a pleasure. Thank you so much, James. James is UNESCO's chair on bullying and cyberbullying. And a professor of clinical sociology in Dublin City University Institute of Education. James leads DCU Anti-Bullying Center, a university-designed research center which investigates bullying and digital safety in educational and organizational contexts. We invited James to talk with us about rethinking school bullying post-pandemic.
Those wishing to know more about James' work can follow his work on LinkedIn. James, first of all, thank you for having accepted our invitation. And can you tell us a bit more about who you are and what you do?
Thank you, Tito. Thank you, Cristiane, for inviting me to be part of this webinar today. I'm very excited to be here with you, and I'm very interested and supportive of the work that you do. So yeah, I was originally a school teacher many years ago, and I remember the first time I came across a case of school bullying, I was really surprised and upset by it because I had never been bullied in school myself, and I'd never come across myself and in my own experience. And the first time I came across a student who had been bullied, I was shocked that this could happen, and that kind of started a lifelong curiosity about school bullying. And of course, in those days, there was no cyberbullying. There was no online way to bully people. There was just old-fashioned face-to-face bullying in the schoolyard or in the classroom and so on. And over the years, as I've continued my studies in this area and built up our research centre here in Dublin City University, we have realized that bullying is a much more complex experience than it was all those years ago when I came across that first student who was being bullied in my school. So I work with an amazing team here at DCU, and there are about 50 people working in our research centre, and all on different projects related to bullying and online safety. We were very lucky that over the years we've had some very good and generous funders who have helped us to do the work we do. Of course, our own government in Ireland has funded us for about 10 years now. And then we've had European Union funding, and we've had funding also from industry partners. Currently, we're working with Vodafone, and I don't know if I should say it or not, but we'll be bringing a new resource that we've developed with Vodafone to Portugal in November. And I look forward to telling you more about that when I'm allowed to. But yes, we will be we've developed a new resource to help first-time smartphone users be safer online. And then we are also working at the moment with Equinix Foundation, who are data centers, and we've worked in the past with Meta and TikTok. And all of these industry partners have been very generous to us and given us the money and trust us to go away and do the research that we know needs to be done in this area. So yeah, it's been a really interesting journey over the last 25 or 30 years, and there's still a lot more to do as we understand this space and realize how complex it is.
Oh, it's great to know that Vodafone Portugal will be doing some work on this arena, because we've been following the work of Vodafone in the UK, which is really quite impressive. And we've been pressing Vodafone Portugal to do something along those lines.
Okay.
And they haven't been very responsive. So we're glad to know that they're finally doing something, and we're eager to know more about it. I believe you have a presentation, and you can share it with us, and so that you can guide. Okay. Are you going to be in Portugal in November? Is that it?
Yeah, I'm not sure about that yet, but
Okay.
if I am, I'll be sure to let you know
Great.
for
Please
definite.
do.
Yeah.
Please.
So can you see the slide presentation now?
Yes.
And is it just a presentation, or can you see the slides on the side as well?
We can see the slides on the side as well.
But let's try get rid of those then if we can. I think I'm going to have to stop sharing for a second. They might just distract you. And let me just get that out. From the beginning. Okay, now if I'm able to do that, I should be able to come back to you now. Really pushing my technology skills today.
No problem.
Okay, how's that?
Perfect.
Super. Okay.
Can you connect your camera as well? Because we're not seeing you. We're seeing the presentation, but we're not seeing you.
Just 1 second now.
Oh.
How's that?
Okay, better now.
Perfect.
Okay, so hang on now. So can you see the presentation now?
Yes, we can.
Super. Okay. So I'll make a start then if that's okay. Just to say that again, I'm very grateful to be invited to speak with you today. And my reflection today is about really kind of, I suppose, post-pandemic. We're all reevaluating our lives. and our societies and the way we connect with each other. And I suppose bullying and cyberbullying as a human phenomenon are also kind of spaces in which there's been a rethinking going on for quite some time. Um, if we look at bullying and how it's been defined since the 1970s, and the definition has been very well established as school bullying is unwanted aggressive behavior that is repeated over time and involves an imbalance of power. And that definition has really colored all of the research and all of the interventions that have been developed over the last 40 or 50 years in relation to bullying. And when the online aspect came along and cyberbullying became something we were aware of, for the most part, researchers and educators just took that existing definition and just stuck on online onto it. And over the last 10 years or so, a number of us have been arguing that we need to reconceptualize bullying. It's in that the definition we have had is one that served us very well. But as we became more aware of the complexity of bullying, as the online space developed more, as we live more blended lives, and we're much more aware today of the connection between individual bullying behavior and societal norms and social processes, and that maybe this definition didn't really fully capture all that complexity. So I've been involved with UNESCO and the World Anti-Bullying Forum for about the last 3 or 4 years, working on with a working group of experts from around the world on the definition. And just this year, we've published what we've come up with. And so what we've come up with now is that it's a more complex definition. It's not as succinct as the one that we have since the 1970s, but we feel that reflects our understanding of bullying now better because it is a more complex issue, I think, than may have been recognized in the past. So now we talk about school bullying as a damaging social process. So it's not just the individual action where one child bullies another child or one group bullies a child or whatever. It's actually a social process. So it serves as a function of society. And it is characterized by an imbalance of power. But traditionally, we would have seen that imbalance of power being maybe physical strength or hierarchical roles in a school or in a society or wherever the bullying is taking place. But we now recognize that imbalance of power is very much linked to societal norms and institutional norms. So if we learn in our society, if it's normative that people of color are seen as less important, or that women are confined to certain roles in society, those kind of societal norms will create an imbalance of power, and then that imbalance in power is exercised through social processes that damage people. And it always involves unwanted interpersonal behavior. So a lot of what was in the original definition is in this definition. To repeat it, it's an imbalance of power and it's unwanted negative actions. But we've called out more how that's all influenced by the societal and institutional norms. And so that's really important, I think, if we're to really deal in an effective way with the complexity of bullying today. It's not just an individual action, it's an individual action in a context underpinned by societal norms. And I think I think a lot of people working in this space now appreciate a definition that's more complex like this.
James, can I
Yes.
ask a question regarding that?
Yes.
One of the things that we mention often is the fact that bullying is a behavior between peers. Is that something that you are considering? And this means, can there be bullying between a teacher can bully a student can bully a teacher? How does your definition considers that?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And our definition, we were very clear in our deliberations that our context is schools, but anyone can be engaged in bullying in the school. So the bullying could be peer-to-peer, or it could be a teacher to a student as well. And we spent a lot of time thinking about that. In my country, in Ireland, we don't include teacher-student bullying in our national policies because that's seen as being a breach of professional conduct and is dealt with in a different way. But at this level here with the UNESCO and World Anti-Bullying Forum working group, it was very much called out that the bullying can occur between any two individuals in a school community, teacher and student, student, and so on.
Okay. Thank you.
No, thanks for the question, and please stop me as I go along if there are any other questions that you might have. So how big is the problem? Well, UNESCO's data says that globally, 1 in 3 children experience bullying. And it's really important at this point to call out, when I describe bullying, I'm calling out cyberbullying as part of that. In fact, I actually don't like to use the term cyberbullying anymore because it suggests that what happens online in terms of bullying is a totally different phenomenon to what happens offline. But young people today, like all of us, live blended lives. And what we now know from research is that if you're bullied online, you're probably also bullied offline. Some of the research shows that 99% of those who are bullied online are also bullied offline. So when we talk about bullying, we're meaning bullying and wherever it happens, online or offline. And if we think about the numbers involved, 1 in 3 children experiencing bullying globally, that's more than the number of children globally who contracted COVID during the pandemic. So this is a problem of pandemic proportions. And yet still in so many places, I hear teachers say, we don't have any bullying in our school, or sure, it's only children being children, or boys being boys, or whatever it might be. But yet we know that across the globe, the figures are really, really significant. We do a comparison around the world. We see that in Europe, it's about 25% of children report experiencing bullying, much higher in the Middle East, up to 41%. And even within Europe, if we look at, say, for example, the figures for Ireland, we're a bit lower. We're down at 22%. In England and Wales, they're at 32%. So they're a bit above the UK, or sorry, above the European average there, but very worrying figures from the Middle East. We look at Central America, it's down around 22%. South America is higher there at 30%. And North Africa, 42%, and Sub-Saharan Africa is 48% as well. So the figures vary. Globally, it's about a third is the average, but it's quite high in some places and a little bit lower in other places.
Okay.
So
do you have data on Portugal? Does this report, behind the numbers report, has
yeah.
on Portugal?
Yes, I'm sorry, I don't have the specific data in front of me right now, but the UNESCO behind the numbers report on bullying has data on almost every country in the world.
Okay, thank you.
So globally then, if we look at it in terms of gender, about 30% of girls and about 35% of boys in the 13 to 15 year age group are all experiencing bullying at school. Boys are more likely to be bullied in the Middle East, North Africa, and the Pacific, whereas girls are more likely to be bullied in Europe and in North America. And I suppose I'm a sociologist. The question then is, well, what's the different about those societies that causes those differences in prevalence and between genders and so on? And so cultural attitudes and social dynamics in different societies will dictate the amount of bullying that takes place. And this is where we go back to our original definition. It didn't capture that, whereas the new definition captures that bullying behavior is underpinned by social norms. So as I said, the position of people of color, the position of people of different genders and sexualities or social class, all of those positions set some people up to be more likely to be bullied or not, and also more likely to have a positive response or not. So cultural attitudes, social dynamics, really important. Also, the way schools address and report instances of bullying. Some countries are really good at getting their schools to report bullying. So the incidence of bullying may be higher in those countries just because more bullying is reported. We also know that the data that we have from across the globe shows there is a relationship between low affluence and more risk to being bullied. The poorer a child is, no matter where they live on the planet, the more likely they are to experience bullying. And again, it that points to the fact that maybe poorer children have less cultural capital and social capital behind them. It's harder for them maybe to fit in. They might stand out because they're not able to live the same life as their peers in their school or whatever it might be. And standing out is a really important cause of being bullied. People who are different in any way at all are usually more prone to being bullied.
James, can
we
we go
use
back?
a phrase. Let me just say, and you ask a question next. We use a phrase in Portugal, and we say usually in the sessions that we do in schools, particularly with parents and teachers, that difference is a marker for bullying usually. If you
Yes.
are a different race, if you are a different religion, if you paint your hair green, if you are a good student or a bad student, if you're different from the majority, it's a marker for bullying.
And isn't that a really sad, a really sad statement about our schools and our communities? That fitting in is valued more than creativity, than difference, than diversity and inclusion. And so the challenge I think for us is to try and teach tolerance and diversity and inclusion, not just in our schools, but in our workplaces and our colleges and all the organizations that we belong to. Because if we all just want to fit in, then new ideas won't come. Creativity is going to be delayed, and that's bad for society.
Absolutely.
Okay, James, just going back a little bit, because how can we make a difference between physical fights and bullying? Because many times teachers and the school personnel says, "Oh, it's only a fight. It's just kid things, boy things." How can we differentiate if it is a physical fight or if it is bullying?
So if we look at the physical fight from the outside, it's a symptom of something else. If the physical fight happens between two kids who are angry with each other, pretty much equal in strength, pretty much equal in status, and they're just expressing their anger with each other in an inappropriate way, that's not bullying. If the physical fight if the physical aggression is carried out by somebody who, for some reason or another, experience themselves to be more powerful, maybe because of their race, their gender, their social class, their physical size of them, or whatever it might be, then it's repeated, or the fear of repetition, well, then we might say it's bullying. So I think for a teacher to respond, they have to understand what's the motivation under that physical fight.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. You also mentioned repetition. One of the things that we struggle when we go to schools is students saying, I just called her a bad name once. It was only once. It was not repeated. And the fact is that girl or boy can hear that insult from different people, and thus the repetition comes. How do you look at it, the repetition factor?
Yeah, I think we used to be very, again, with the older definition from the 1970s, we were very, I found the effect of that definition was that teachers would say, oh, it only happened once. And they didn't really analyze any deeper than that. We're much more aware now today, especially in the online space, that sometimes something may happen once, but there may be a fear that it will be repeated. And the impact of that fear is the same as if it is being repeated. So we say now repetition or the fear of repetition. And also then, as you know, online, if you post something once, just once, it's out there forever. So it might as well be repeated. So I think the repetition has to be interpreted in a loose way and not too strictly.
Okay, thank you.
So then, just moving on then, as we kind of said this already a bit, who is bullied? Well, the people who are bullied are those who stand out. And the data shows that the physical appearance is the number one reason why somebody will be picked on and will be a target for bullying. So it could be, as you said there, that they dye their hair, they're too tall, they're too short, they're too fat, they're too skinny. It could be linked to their race and ethnicity, which is the second reason people report why they've been bullied. The poor people from poorer families are more likely to be bullied as well. And those who are migrant children, or children of migrants also stand out for being bullying. Again, you can imagine a migrant child coming into a host community and eating different food, dressing differently, maybe not having the language, and then what we call gender non-conforming sometimes, which I don't like that term, but basically, if you're not seen to be a normal boy or a normal girl and behaving in the ways that those are supposed to behave, all of these reasons that have been identified for making somebody a target of bullying, they are all, as you said there a moment ago, Tito, they're all about standing out. Somebody who stands out from the host community, from the mainstream, they are more likely to be bullied. And we need to be really careful here because we don't want to cross a line and look like we're victim blaming. Why can't you fit in more? Why can't you wear your hair like all the other boys and girls? That's not the point of this research. The point is that we as a society, as a community, as a school, as a family, we need to appreciate that not everyone is the same. And if we think everyone is the same, we're only all pretending. So this is where sociologists often talk about bullying is a mechanism to police the boundaries of normality. So if somebody crosses a boundary into something that's not seen as the norm, they get punished for it. But also, other people get the message. If you cross that boundary, you will be punished for it as well. So this is where we talk about bullying being a social process, not just an individual behavior. And it's always around standing out, being different, not fitting in, are reasons why people might be bullied. So and I know, just to call them out again, not everybody who is bullied will go on to be affected long-term negatively, but many people are. The research we've done here in Ireland shows that if a child who is bullied gets the right support and help pretty immediately, within a matter of weeks, they can get over the bullying and get on with the rest of their life. But if they don't get that support, if the bullying goes on for a long time, and if they don't have kind of the resilience that maybe they would have might otherwise have, then all of these symptoms can begin to take hold in their life, and these can be long term, all the way through into adulthood, causing them ultimately to feel disconnected from other people and to carry the burden of low self-esteem and stress and anxiety for the rest of their lives. And in the most extreme cases, suicidal thoughts and maybe even suicide itself. From an educational point of view, a child will not do well in school. They will not achieve well if they are afraid of the teacher or of their peers. So reduced educational achievement is an issue that is very much linked to being victimized or being targeted for bullying. And that's not just an issue for the individual who is targeted. It's also an issue for the individual who is doing the bullying. We know that these same symptoms can also appear in them long-term in their life. And that can be worrying as well. The biggest worry is that we have, not the biggest worry, but another worry is that it's not just an issue for the individual, it's also an issue for for our society. Because what we're doing is we're maintaining dominant social processes, keeping tight boundaries on what things people can say and do and believe, and that's bad for society in the long run. And then also that restricts the development of our culture and our ideas. It can cause increased levels of hate and crime, and ultimately social inequalities are reproduced. So bullying isn't just about the individual, it's also a problem for our society. So I think that's something we need to take into account, and it's something that the newer definition helps us with, because the older definition didn't really call out that societal dimension. So we've done some work with UNESCO on developing, on trying to identify what are the levers of success in preventing and tackling bullying. And we did a consultation with about 70 experts around the world, and we said to them, what are the things that help address bullying in a positive way? And those experts came back, and we synthesized what they said, and we developed what we call now UNESCO's whole education approach to bullying. Now, the core difference now is that we used to talk about what we feel with that was that There was some success, but it put all of the responsibility for tackling bullying on the school. And back in the 1800s, that might have made sense because schools, where they existed, were in a village, and that was kind of the world, you know. But now a school is part of a whole education system, a whole society. It's connected to the rest of the globe online. And I think it would be a bit naive for us to continue talking about whole school approaches. So the whole school approach has to be part of a whole education approach. And when we were discussing in UNESCO what would the right name be for this approach, we had different names. For me, I preferred whole society approach, but we have to pick a name that translates across the globe because UNESCO works at a global level. And whole education approach is the one that we landed on. It's not a perfect name, but it tries to call out that the school exists within a wider education system and community. And we need to recognize the interconnectedness of the school with that wider community. Education, technology, societal systems, they all impact and underpin what's happening in the local school. And so we can't just deal with what's happening in the local school. We have to try and deal at different levels across society and the education system. So based on our consultation with the experts, we developed the whole education approach, and there are 9 components to that approach. And they range from strong political leadership to learner empowerment, creating safe psychological and physical schools and classrooms, curriculum learning and teaching that promotes a caring school climate, evidence. It's really important to keep gathering evidence. I would say that as a researcher, I suppose, and then make sure that that evidence feeds into our interventions, so they're evidence-based. We need to involve all the stakeholders of the school community, including parents. This isn't just a problem for teachers and school staff to solve. There needs to be really good, authoritative, clear reporting mechanisms for learners and the learners must see them as being effective. The worst thing can happen is that students say, well, we reported that and nothing happened. Sometimes the confidentiality around dealing with a child who is engaged in bullying behavior means that we can't tell everybody what's happening. But we should be able to say to them, that has been dealt with, and you need to trust us on that. And it needs to be accountable. We need to be accountable to those who are concerned about bullying in the school. Training and support for teachers and other staff is really important. The research shows they don't get enough on bullying. And then collaboration and partnerships between the education sector and the wider range of partners. Too often we talk about social media companies and as if they are out there. They're not out there, they're in our schools, in the pockets and the phones and the computers of everyone in the school. So they need to be partners in education and help us build solutions to these problems going forward. Now, I don't think I have time to go through all of those in detail, but the 9 of those core components of the whole education approach are all equally important. Each component is essential, and none of them stands alone. So it's not okay to say we're just going to focus on strong political leadership or evidence gathering or involvement of stakeholders. This needs to be addressed at a national level at least. And all of those 9 components need to be worked on at the same time. So one-off measures are not effective. So a school bringing in a speaker or having a program they run once a year during anti-bullying week or whatever it might be, the evidence is they don't work very well. They have a very short-term effect. There has to be a much more systematic and systemic approach across the school and across the education system. So for example, UNESCO has an International Day of Bullying every year. It's the first Thursday in November, I think, and that's a really important day as a focal point for all our activities. But if all of our activities focus just on that day once a year, that's not going to be very successful. We need to ensure that children and young people are centrally involved in the work to tackle bullying. It is nothing about us without us is a way of summing that up. Under the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child, children have a right to be involved in every decision that's made about them. And in the space on bullying, that is really important. And people like Laura Lundy at Queen's University in Belfast have done amazing work in developing frameworks to help us to work with children around co-designing and co-commissioning research and interventions on bullying.
We need to invite her for next year then.
Brilliant. Yes, definitely think you should. Definitely think you should. Schools are supported by education authorities and with guidance and resources. So the education authorities need to be involved. And they can't say we've devolved that to the school. The local school knows best how to deal with this. That's partly true, but the local school needs that support from government ministries or whatever it might be. Um, Also, these key characteristics promote positive, respectful, and caring interactions, and that's at the heart of a whole education approach. How we treat each other, and how we model behavior, and how we check in with ourselves. Am I acting in a way that could be on the continuum of bullying? In DCU, we have an anti-bullying program called Fuse. It's anti-bullying and online safety. And it tries to help people recognize, respond to, and report where necessary bullying and online safety issues. But in recognizing the first stage there, they need to look at themselves as well as others. Could my behavior be seen as bullying behavior? And then how do I respond to that? And this whole education approach needs to be implemented across all schools and across the network of relationships attached to schools, not just in one school. So in Ireland, at the end of 2022, our government launched a new action plan on bullying. It's called, in the Gaelic word, Cináltas, which means kindness, and it's rooted in UNESCO's whole education approach. And there are 61 actions in that plan, and every one of those actions has a name or an organization attached to it in terms of responsibility for implementing it. And so we're trying to really get a whole system approach to tackling bullying in Ireland now. And the government has developed this plan and related procedures to try and bring that about. And it's a big job. We've given ourselves 5 years to do it. And hopefully over those 5 years, we will achieve a lot and continue to reduce the rate of bullying in our schools and online.
One
So
of
I'm
the issues, James, let me interrupt you. One of the
yeah.
issues that we have in Portugal is we don't have data regarding the situation in Portugal.
Hmm.
And it's difficult if you don't have a diagnosis of the situation to elaborate an action plan to prevent and tackle bullying. So it's basically like we're playing the Mexican game piñata, you know.
Yes. Yeah.
We, and in that game, people want assemblies. The more
Yeah.
students you can get in the room, the better. A
Yeah.
speaker goes there, it's a one-off thing, and everybody's happy. But in fact, nothing happens and nothing changes. How
Yes.
how can you change that mentality?
Yes. Well, I think the number one point there is evidence, and we need data. And people say, well, you might say that you're a social scientist, that's your job. But without the data, we can't plan the right interventions. And that has been a problem here in Ireland too. And we haven't had a central place for collecting data. My centre kind of serves that purpose. So when we get funding, we try and do it, but we don't have over a period of time sustained data that allows us to measure the prevalence of bullying and whether we're making a difference or not. So one of the things I really hammered home to our Department of Education was that we need to collect data, and that's one of the actions in our action plan. It's complicated because the data that we might collect from teachers might give us a different picture to data that we might collect from children or parents, and then also we have to collect the data in such a way that it doesn't create a league table of schools, which is the school in Ireland that has the least amount of bullying and so on. So we're still working through exactly what is the best way to collect that data, but we know it has to be collected, and then that will allow us to have more robust interventions going forward. And even if we try interventions in our schools, we should be collecting data around them to see if they work. Far too much education policy is introduced in schools without evidence to underpin it. It's a gut feeling. There's a narrative in society that says we should do something about this problem, or it's a political policy led by a politician because they feel it's the right thing to do. But very few education policies are actually underpinned by robust research. And that's the number one thing I would call for is let's research this problem before we come up with the policy and the solutions.
Absolutely. That's why we say in Portugal, and we've been fighting for that, is that we need to have a diagnosis of the situation. And each school should have its own diagnosis because schools are different one from another.
Yes.
Situations, the types of bullying that might happen in one school might not happen in another one. So each school needs to develop its own research to have a picture. And from that picture, an action plan can be drawn. Awareness sessions, okay, is something that is important that can be done, but they are not the only tool that the school can have to prevent and to tackle bullying. You mentioned policies. It's something that schools have a general policy, but most of them, very few of them, have a policy regarding bullying and cyberbullying. So it's something that's really important, you know.
Yeah.
The fact of the importance of listening to the kids, to the students, it's very important. And sometimes we think that grown-up people are afraid to listen, and they say maybe they think the young people have nothing to teach us, but they are the one concerned to bullying specifically. They are the one who do it, who suffer it. They know better how to tackle it and to combat it. And if they are involved in the solutions, they will it will work better, I think.
I think that's a really fundamental point. I think often what underpins debate around these issues is what I would describe as a Victorian conceptualization of childhood, that children should be seen and not heard. And so we as the adults know best, and we have all the power. Children don't know anything, they're not adults, so therefore they have less power. And that idea of childhood is really not supported by research and science or human rights law anymore. And if we look at the UN Convention on the Rights of the Child and we start with that and move out from there, well, then we should be working with children to find solutions for their problems. At the moment in Ireland, we have quite a loud discourse in relation to smartphones and social media and children. And nobody is asking the children. We're doing some research in DCU, asking the children what they think about that, but nobody else is asking the children what actually does it mean to them. And what we're finding in research is a much more complex reality in which children are very much aware of the issues and the problems, have solutions, and actually are very good for the most part at self-regulation. But nobody is listening to them on that.
Absolutely. The same situation in Portugal. The Portuguese
that's our fight here.
Yeah.
Portuguese government issued recommendations to schools 2 days ago, basically recommending the ban of smartphones from schools. But that's not supported by research.
No.
It's just following what others have been doing, and they themselves, other countries, have not been supported by research either. So we're basically falling into a domino situation in which the first piece falls and the other ones go along.
It's like somebody sent a memo out to all the ministers for education around the world, and they're all doing the same thing at the moment. But actually, they're not listening to the children, and they're not listening to the researchers, really. You know.
Absolutely. James, I was really curious about the nine items you mentioned on the whole school approach. Can we still have about 45 minutes? Do you think, or 30 minutes? Sorry. Do you think you can detail a bit more?
Yeah, certainly. I can go through them with you now if you like. So, can you see my screen again there?
Yes.
Okay, great. So let's go through them. So if I just work out how to go to the next one, So So the 9 components of the whole education approach, and it's really important. I'm sorry for the typo there on the screen. We call out this. It's not whole school. It's whole education approach. And because schools, although they do know what's best for them, they are part of a system of schools, and they are also part of a society. And children now, today, not 100 years ago, but today, live in different levels of society. And so so for us to treat them as if they only come to our school and the world outside doesn't exist, that's not going to actually be very successful. So the first aspect of the whole education approach is strong political leadership. I'm really happy to say that I've seen that here in Ireland in relation to school bullying. We have had a couple of ministers for education who have really prioritized bullying and at a national level. And if they do that, schools take it more seriously. A letter or a memo or some piece of a guideline or something that comes from the national political leaders really is taken seriously in our schools. And that means that the laws and policies then can actually have an impact if they come from that level. Also, that they need to be, the strong political leadership has to be connected to other laws around inclusiveness. And as I said, it's not just bullying as behavior on its own. It's underpinned by attitudes to race and gender and sexuality and so on. So it's part of a suite of inclusive laws on inclusiveness. And so that's really important to have. But that strong political leadership is a key. I know I said earlier on that each of these components is equally important, but I do feel if we don't have strong political leadership, it's very hard to achieve the other 8. We need to create safe psychological and physical schools environments. It's too many of our schools physically have spaces that feel dangerous to children. It might be in the classroom itself, where kids are left to rule those spaces themselves. It might be the schoolyard. It might be the toilets. It might be the common areas. It could be anywhere. We need to audit our schools and see physically how do these schools work in terms of safety. And the best people to tell us that are the kids themselves, the students. Okay. We do know one of the projects I'm involved in at the moment, we're looking at school design, physically school design. And there is emerging work on that shows that the physical design of a school impacts on children's behavior. So for example, one piece of research showed that if the school playground is designed is round, the walls are make a circle of it, there's less bullying. If a playground is square, there's more bullying because you have corners to go and hide in, and you can create different spaces where a round one is much less likely to result in that. So physical space requires investment. It requires adults making sure that space feels safe, and it requires listening to children telling us what parts of school they feel safe or they don't feel safe.
That's an exercise we do when we go to schools.
Brilliant.
Asking students to name the safe zones they see in the schools. And we use the traffic light analogy, red
Yes.
zones, yellow zones, and green zones. So
yes,
the school becomes aware of where are the places in which the bullying is most likely to occur, and where are the places that our students feel safe.
That is so important. And then that can be layered up then. So how do we decorate those spaces? What is it that makes one space feel safer than another? It could be the shape of the room, it could be how it's directed, it could be the light, the windows, it could be how close it is to the principal's office, and so on. But it's what you call it. It's a job to be done, and involves the government and whoever funds the schools, because they will also need resourcing.
Another thing that we also do, and I think it's in line with the second bullet point, is asking students who are the people in school that make them feel safe.
Yes.
Usually there is somebody that looks over the yard, a teacher is more empathic with students, and so it's good to know, and other students will learn that a certain person is something that they can talk to.
And what's really important there, I think, Tito, is that often in schools we set up structures that are supposed to be caring. So in Ireland, for example, most schools will have a class tutor system where each class group has like a parent figure. And we expect those systems to work, but often that may not be the person that a child relates to best. There may be another member of staff, or it might be a teaching assistant, or it could be somebody in the school who they just get on better with, or they feel a closer connection with. And we have to make sure our structures, physical and otherwise, are and organizational, I suppose, and institutional, are fluid enough to allow for that. There's the hierarchies in our school can sometimes stop people reporting, and the flatter an organization is, the less bullying there will be because people can call it out quicker.
Absolutely.
So the third thing then will be training and support for teachers and other school staff. And this is a really hard one at the moment, certainly for us in Ireland. I think it's the same around most of Europe. With the emphasis on STEM and numeracy and literacy, it means that students who are training to be teachers in our teacher education colleges and universities, they're not getting a lot of time to learn about bullying and bullying prevention. They're getting lots of time learning about STEM and lots of time learning about numeracy and literacy, but not on the well-being and not on bullying. And we need to improve that. And then once they qualify and go into schools, we need to be providing them with ongoing training and support so that they can realize that they have a very key role to play in terms of tackling and preventing bullying. And linked to that, and our committee called this out, we can't expect school staff to care for students and create a safe environment for students if the staff themselves don't feel they work in a safe and caring environment. And so their working conditions are really important, and have a direct impact on their willingness to support children and to prevent and intervene when bullying occurs. The fourth one then is curriculum. So in terms of curriculum, we have to have teaching and learning that promotes school climate that is caring. So if we're teaching an English poem, or we're teaching mathematics, or we're the way we organize the curriculum, we need to make sure there's adequate space in there, reference to heroes who are kind people, that we hold up those and celebrate those who make a positive difference in the school. And all of that can be done through the school curriculum. Teacher-pupil relationships, and they're key to the teacher-pupil relationships are like a platform on which the curriculum is built, and so they're key to this as well, fostering a learner-centered and a caring school environment. So the pedagogy that teachers rely on needs to be student-focused and not just about banking knowledge into their brains. And so that's a really important part about it. Being learner-centered is essential. And that kind of school where where the learners are the center of the school and the center of teaching and learning, rather than the subject, that kind of school will have less bullying in it as well. Reporting mechanisms, I touched on this earlier on, are really important. We need to have staff who have specific responsibilities for monitoring bullying in the school. Now, and they need to be identifiable. So the idea, on one hand, is that every member of the school staff has a responsibility for promoting a bully-free environment. On the other hand, everyone's job can become nobody's job. So we need to have at least one, if not several, champions in a school who continuously make sure everyone remembers to watch out for bullying and to do things to prevent bullying. So this could be an anti-bullying coordinator in the school, or it might be an anti-bullying committee in the school, but it needs to be there, it needs to be clear, and that it is there and have a very clear role within the school. And schools reporting systems need to be integrated with known and accessible community support and referral services. So for example, a student is being bullied by another student, and the child who's engaged in the bullying puts something online about that student to hurt them, okay? I came across a case of this recently. The parents in that case really need to be able to deal with the police, the school, social workers, all of the people who might be able to help in this problem, okay? And the school is a conduit for all of that. So if I go to the school, it should be very easy then to seamlessly then find myself talking to the police if necessary, or talking to the social workers or youth workers or whoever it might be. So the school it can be like a doorway into all those services. They should be integrated. The parents and the people who are concerned, the staff, whoever it might be, shouldn't feel they have to keep retelling the story, going to different offices to meet different people. We need to find a way of integrating those services together so they all work for the benefit of those who are affected. And also, as part of the reporting mechanisms, we need to have so much bullying now immediately goes online. So we need to have very clear and accessible and supportive relationships with social media companies. So one of the things I've been asking here in Ireland for a number of years is that I think in every school, maybe the school principal or someone they delegate should have advanced reporting rights with the social media companies. So there's a problem of bullying in my school. The students have taken it online. As a principal, I should be able to contact the social media company directly and say that needs to come down, okay? Or I need you to block that account or whatever it might be. And if social media companies could do that and allow for that, I think a lot of the anxiety and stress around online bullying would be greatly reduced.
James, can I ask you a question there? I think that can be a problem to have each school have a person dealing directly with a social media company, because you would have, for instance, in Portugal, and Portugal is a small country, some 3,000 schools or 5,000 schools. That will be an overload for social media companies, and I doubt that they'll be open to something like that. But I've heard of an experience in the US by Ann Collier and Matthew Sudd. They created the I Can Help Delete, which was a helpline for schools, which schools they could report to this helpline, and this helpline would contact with the social media companies. Would that seem to be a more
I mean, even like if there's an organization that can filter those 3,000 schools to the social media company, then that's fine. But there needs to be an expedited access to the social media company. Right now, it can be a case where a school principal or a member of staff needs to get something taken down, and they are going on to the same platforms with all the other millions of users around the world. So if there is some expedited access to the social media company through an intermediary like you described, that would be wonderful, you know. And remember, these companies have huge resources,
Absolutely.
you know, and they have billions of people who are using their services. So, and also I would say that in terms of them being overloaded, I know that there was a big debate here in Ireland when we set up our online safety commissioner about whether we would have the facility for individual reporting to the online safety commissioner. And there was a fear that they would be overloaded. But when we look to the experience in Australia, where they already had that in place, actually, most people don't need to report. And I think it's really important that we get it. That reminds me to say that most people use the internet and social media in a very safe and happy way most days. There's a small proportion of people who have a negative experience, which is really terrible, and they need all the support that we can get and give them, an education and so on. So actually, the experience in Australia where they had individual reporting was that they weren't overwhelmed by reporting. So let's look at the evidence and see what can be done. But there needs to be expedited reporting into the social media companies that schools can use either through someone else or directly. But also then within the school, students and staff should be able to know that when they bring a case of bullying to an authority figure, that it is being dealt with, and that it's there's accountability on how that's being dealt with.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Thank you.
Okay, so collaboration and partnership between the education sector and a wide range of partners. This is really important. I kind of touched on that there in terms of the social media companies, but also with different sectors, including health, social services, law and enforcement, and so on, that all of these people are the school is like a one-stop shop where everybody who can help is involved. And it's no big deal to go to have these different services come in and out of the school and offer support. Other relevant sectors should provide resources and support to reduce bullying and cyberbullying, including the social media companies. And also NGOs like yourself also have a very important role to play in terms of giving schools more support, more resources,
in terms of so a school should see itself. In the old days, schools, certainly here in Ireland, they had high walls around them and gates. And when students went in those gates in the morning, they were closed and they were locked, and everything that happened in there was a bubble, good or bad. But those walls have become lower and lower and lower now, particularly because we're also connected technologically. And it's important that the schools see that as an opportunity, not a threat, and that collaboration and partnerships are part of how we do business now in education. They're not a threat, they're actually an opportunity. And then the seventh thing in the whole education approach was this involvement of all stakeholders in the school community, including parents. So again, that's repeating that point, but it speaks particularly to the structures in the school, how staff deal with principals and boards of management and learners, that those structures are fluid and that people have a way of communicating problems and opportunities with each other across the school community. And in Ireland, I would say we have a very important National Parents Council, but I would still think that parents are seen as outsiders and that I'm a teacher, I'm a professional, I know what to do. We need to continuously move towards involving all the stakeholders in the school community, because that is for the benefit of everybody. And extracurricular activities can be part of that as well, involving people outside the school. Schools don't have to have all the resources themselves. There's plenty of resources in the local community as well. Empowering student participation, we've touched on this already. There's a lot of tokenism around this. A lot of the time we say, oh yes, we've consulted the students. We've gone into a number of schools recently doing research on school bans on smartphones, and the schools have all told us we consulted the students. But when we speak to the students, we say, were you consulted? And they say, nope, we were told it's happening, and that's what the consultation looked like. And they tell us then that they have student council, but the student council has no power, and what they suggest never actually gets taken on. So having real empowerment and participation with our students is really important, and it's a challenge for those of us who see ourselves as a professional who knows everything, but rather we should see ourselves as professionals who facilitate everything. And I think that would make a big difference in terms of how we can combat the problem of bullying online and offline in our schools. And then the last one is evidence. We've talked about this before. We need to monitor bullying within our schools all of the time and across the education system. If one school seems to have more bullying than another school, we need to look at what are the local issues that are happening there, what's causing that. We need regular assessment of the effectiveness of prevention and intervention measures. So many of the different initiatives that are tried are not underpinned by evidence. But schools are really happy to book a speaker and get them to come in and fill a 2-hour slot, pack everybody into a school hall for an assembly, and then that speaker leaves. Where's the checking of the quality of that speaker? You know, where's the certification? Where's the evidence that works? So monitoring and assessment should involve both learners and school staff and should include questions about school climate, because bullying is so intimately linked to school climate. Big piece of work to be done here in developing the diagnosis, as you put it, Tito, earlier on, and then being able to respond appropriately to that. So those 9 are core components of the whole education approach have been identified out of a consultation with about 70 anti-bullying experts around the world through a scientific process, and then going back to them and checking we were understanding and going back and checking we were understanding. And that's now official policy from UNESCO that every education system in the world should be operating when it comes to bullying out of a whole education approach. And what I think is really interesting about this is we're talking about bullying, but actually those 9 components are actually just a good way to run our education system. And if we tackle bullying, actually we will tackle a whole lot of other issues as well. So yeah, so that's the summary then really is, sorry, Tito, yes?
I believe Cristiane wanted to ask you a question, and I believe you have a slide for that.
Sure. Yeah, because we know that you and your team have been working on the human and economic costs of bullying in schools. Can you tell us a little bit about it? Just to
yeah, sure. Yeah. I'm going to be guided by you guys on time. So like what we have, like when we look at bullying and when it's not dealt with, there have been some studies that actually put a price on it. Okay. We've talked about the human cost already in terms of an individual's self-esteem depression, maybe even suicidal ideation, and so on. But there's also an economic cost. One study in Sweden said that in 1 year, in the year 2022, 140,000 children across the school system were bullied. 14,000 of those, 10%, will require specific interventions from public services in the long term. Okay, so that would mean, for example, I've left school, I still carry the low self-esteem, I still have anxiety and stress as a result of the bullying. It's stopping me going to work every day. I need to visit my doctor. I need to go for counseling. Maybe I need to be hospitalized. Maybe I find it hard ever to form good relationships in the workplace or my productivity. So they've looked and put a price on that from an actuarial point of view. And in that particular study, they reckon that the cost of to the public, to the state of those 14,000 people who would require interventions from public services over 30 years will be 4.1 billion euro. So when people say, well, it's only bullying, and push it aside and come up with all those usual excuses, there is a real economic cost over years and years and years to the state as a result of bullying. Another study from Australia identified that 8% of those who were suffering with anxiety disorders as adults were bullied as children, and 11% of those adults who have depressive disorders were bullied as children. And so they reckon that in total, the total annual cost of health and non-health outcomes as a result of bullying in Australia is 763 million Australian dollars in 1 year. So there is a real economic cost in every single country in the world to not dealing with bullying. And every child that we can stop being bullied actually saves us money in the long run. They will be more productive, they'll be happier, they will have higher educational outcomes, which means they will have better opportunities in the workforce, and they will contribute more to the economy. So it's a no-brainer, really. We have to deal with this from a human and an economic point of view.
That's huge. Thank you for sharing it with us.
No problem at all. So just in terms of what we can do, I think the whole education approach to prevention and intervention is a framework that we can use, and all of us who are involved in this space can use that framework to say, well, we have an anti-bullying program in schools. How does it fit in with that framework? Okay, and we did that when we were bringing in the initiatives here at national level in Ireland. We did an audit against the whole education approach to see which of the 9 components were being implemented. We need to ensure that education about diversity and inclusion is occurring in our schools, particularly in these times. The world is changing. There's a move to the right. There's a higher immigration across Europe, and it's really, really easy for us to slip into stereotypes and exclusive ways of thinking about who belongs and who doesn't belong. So we need to really up our efforts in terms of diversity and inclusion, because bullying will be a symptom of exclusion. We need to set targets to reduce the prevalence that's linked to societal norms. So we need to say we want to bring down bullying by X amount, but in order to do that, we're going to educate people more about difference and inclusion, or whatever it might be. And we know in a small scale, when children are educated more about diversity, they bully less. We need to measure that, and as a society and as a national governments. And then we also need to fund anti-bullying programs that are evidence-based and focus on underlying social processes. Let's stop bringing in the speaker for one-off talks. Let's stop bringing in a friend of a friend who can come in and do 3 sessions with the kids, unless we know that the evidence supports what they're doing, that it will have a deep and lasting impact in the school and in the lives of the children. So in summary then, I would say bullying is a serious public health issue. It impacts millions of children and their families worldwide each year. It has a negative impact on the individual, their mental health and well-being and their education, but also on society, because they will not be as happy in society, and also it helps maintain sometimes negative social processes in society, and also it has a negative impact on the economy. So bullying is not just a school problem anymore; it's a societal problem. And also, the whole education approach from UNESCO to tackling bullying in schools is the way forward. I think I happily say that. And we need to recognize now that bullying is a blended experience. So it requires initiatives that recognize a child is being bullied online and offline at the same time.
Mhm. Well,
Thank you.
James, this was quite a session, and a huge thank you. This was a lesson, you know. We
Yep.
really listening to you with real pleasure, and we were drinking all the information that you were providing, and I'm sure the people that will see this session will marvel with it, because it was really informationally very, very, very rich. And you touch points that are really important for our situation here also in Portugal. I would like to make clear that if you need any help from Portugal, if you have any projects developing in Portugal, you can count on us, and we'll gladly give our collaboration.
Super. Thank you very much.
And it's very good to know that we are very much aligned with the ideas and the project and what we've been doing here in Portugal also. So it was good also to hear from you in that point. We are approaching the end of the session, but before we end, you've been giving us lots of recommendations. But before we close the session, can you give us three, I don't know, major tips or piece of the advice for specifically more for parents, maybe? And maybe also teachers, but more parents, if you don't mind, so that they can apply immediately after these sessions concerning to
Yeah,
prevent.
so I always say to parents two things in particular. One is go to the school and ask for help if your child has been bullied. Okay. And don't go into the school angry or giving out. Try and stay calm and approach the teacher or the school principal and say, I need your help with something. My son or my daughter is being bullied in the school. Because if they go in angry, it's harder for the teacher to respond. Okay. So ask the school for help and try to work as a team to sort the problem. The second thing I would say to parents is if your child is being bullied in school, trying to make sure they are having a positive experience in other parts of their life and that the bullying is limited to one space. So if they're being victimized in school, but they're also in a youth club or they're in a dance class or they like cinema or whatever, celebrate all the other strong successes they have in their life so that they get a sense of, well, this is only happening to me because of that child in school. Okay. Just get a sense of proportion on it, sense of perspective. So the child doesn't become defined by that victimization.
Yeah.
And then the third thing I would say to parents is your child might be the child who's doing the bullying. And it's very important that you are aware that that can happen. And if a school contacts you to say, we think your child is engaged in bullying behavior, the gut reaction is to say, oh, not my child. But please listen to that and please help the school and work with them to address it, because if your child is engaged in bullying behavior, they also need help.
Absolutely.
Thank you. That's it. That's it. Okay, thank you. Okay, before we end this session, and because the participants' opinion is important to us, we ask all those watching this session to give us your opinion about this session by the link that will be on the video description. Okay, we are counting on you, Tito.
Yes, and we came to the end of this session. A huge thank you, James. We'd like also to thank our sponsors, TikTok, Google, and .pt, and also the Agarrados.net project that I run together with Cristiane. And special thanks also to all the participants that will be watching this recording.
Yeah. See you all next session. Bye bye.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you, James. Bye.
Thank you, James, so much.